Hello, everybody. How you guys doing? T Bag,
Hey, what's up, my brother?
just on time, man.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
I'm
actually
just.
I'm actually on another group chat with my siblings, and I was like, "Yo, I gotta tap out."
Yeah. Is it like one of those family groups?
Yeah, family group chats. Hey, now
Yeah.
with lockdown, man, the family group chats are lit.
I had to advise my aunt on like fake news is now a criminal act. Stop spreading these videos.
Yeah, I know.
Uh,
I think
the
I
amount of
think
corona
we
stuff she was telling me is crazy.
I know, right? I think we all have that aunt in our family who's gonna send like news updates on Corona and certain
Yeah,
things that are
yeah,
happening, Yeah.
yeah. And I
Yeah, man.
love, this the whole WhatsApp group thing, group dynamic thing is always so funny. I've got a lot of groups, and it's always the same guy. Like just after the president has spoken, that will send
Yes.
like the whole speech to be like the first one to tell everybody that I'm in with the government, man.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Sure. Yeah, sure.
Like people that like leak the conversation just before.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And
It's
then
like
they will, and
we're
then
gonna go to sleep too.
yeah, and then they end that message with, "This comes from a trusted source from the SAPS."
Yeah, don't tell anyone. And meanwhile,
Yeah.
you've told like 200 people you hardly know in a group. So that's but I guess it's what you do, and maybe let's get into it. It's like even that is a dynamic of storytelling,
Sure.
because that
Yeah.
is kind of even in our WhatsApp groups, we've got those storytellers that want to have a
Right.
certain narrative and a certain thing. But yeah, I mean, before we get into Tembisa and where this is just a chat, everyone talks about storytelling. I saw at Cannes Festival as well. They're saying storytelling is
Right.
the future. What is
Right.
storytelling?
Sure. Storytelling, the best way I can think of it when I think of storytelling, and my first experience of storytelling was
Yeah,
being raised by my grandmother,
yeah,
and she used to tell us a lot of stories. Myself and my siblings, and I remember like maybe two of those stories, like, that she would keep repeating, and sometimes the story would change, and there'd be like little gems of lessons, and like, within those stories. So for me the first experience of storytelling was being able to escape a reality while still having relatability, and being able to identify with that reality.
wow,
With storytelling, it's like you allow the audience or the viewers to experience something, and you take them out of that world. It's in the same way like we do with Gomorrah.
yeah,
We allow families to sit together, and all ages and races, and like Gogo
mm,
sits and watches Gomorrah, my sister sits and watches Gomorrah, my nephews, my
mm,
nieces, and but the thing about it is that, we, for that half an hour, we extract them from whatever it is that they're going through, and they enjoy something. But even in enjoying that, they're able to relate and identify. And I think that's the power of storytelling, allowing
yeah,
people to be able to escape from something, but at the same time, while escaping that, they're able to identify in some way lessons, and to see reflections of themselves and situations that they know. And I think that's the success of like storytelling, whether we're doing it in commercials, in
yes.
short form, whether we're doing it in full length feature films, whether we're doing it in drama series. It's still like that. It's that ability to be able to escape for a moment.
Yeah, yeah. And how much of the audience? So you've told a lot of stories, and we're gonna get into that. How much is the audience and in telling that story? I mean, you've got this one-dimensional thing that I'm telling the story, but when you are telling a story, how important is the people and understanding the people that you're telling the story to? Because that must play a role, right?
It
Or
plays a
does that
very big
distract
role.
you? Or does that distract you from telling your story?
No, I think that that's very important, keeping the audience. So I'll give you a very good example. When I made Happiness is a Four-Letter Word,
Yeah,
the ending of that movie wasn't the ending that people saw on screen. I had a different kind of ending. You know, the last scenes of the moment, Nandi and Thomas meet up in the corridor of the hospital. He says he's sorry. And in my head, what I wanted to do is I wanted to shoot a scene with them walking down the hospital corridor. And as they're walking down the hospital corridor, I wanted to leave it quite ambiguous to, do they work it out? Does the relationship continue? And I shot
yeah,
a sequence with them just walking down, and I was like, fade to black. And then my producers were in the room and they're like, what the fuck is this? And I was like, well, yeah,
yeah,
you know, like people must wonder. And they're like, wait, you've taken the audience on a journey for 90 minutes and you
yeah.
want them to wonder.
What is what is
And
happening?
they're like, no ways. They're like, no ways. We are shooting a scene where they're getting married, and then we shot the wedding scene, and then the wedding scene
Yeah,
we approached Lyra and Lyra. So storytelling, you also have a responsibility to the audience.
yeah,
In the same way with commercials, you've got a responsibility to the agency, you've got a responsibility to the client. And and for us, like, or for me as a storyteller, it's about being able to satisfy an audience, because at the end of the day, I always think of it like I'm not going to be in a movie house with popcorn on my own thinking, oh, this is brilliant, brilliant, this is
yeah,
brilliant.
yeah,
You know what I mean? I'm not making work to own it. I'm making work so that the world can enjoy it.
yeah, yeah. And how do you keep on that balance and keep on pushing boundaries? I was watching a Quentin Tarantino movie, the latest one. I think it's something about Hollywood, right? And because he's done so many movies, I kind of got disappointed because there wasn't as much blood and it wasn't Quentin Tarantino. So as a director, how do you get away from that? You know, Thabang has a certain style, and if we don't get that style, we kind of disappointed. I walked away from that Quentin Tarantino thing, and I'm sure he's trying new things, but I'm like, but that's not Quentin Tarantino. There was no
Sure.
blood, there was no this and that. How do
Yeah.
you always, okay, you're a director, you are known from something that could actually
Right.
even trap you. And how
Right.
do you get to a point where you're experimenting new things, but you are still, you know, growing? Because you could get trapped to blood, and I would have walked away satisfied if from the first minute there was blood everywhere. I was like, yeah, that's Quentin Tarantino. But
Yeah.
he's breaking away from that. But in breaking away from that, he's kind of disappointed some people. How do you, as a director, break that, but also keep who you are or what people know you for, you know?
So I think, like, you know, with my journey, I like, you know, so how I fell in love with movies was, you know, looking after my siblings and being the oldest. The best way to entertain everyone was to go to the video store and to hire DVDs, you
Yeah,
know, and 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 I started like creating a relationship with like the video store owners, and they'd have posters up in the video store, and whenever the like movie was no longer new, I would collect those posters and I'd stick them up in my room and blah blah blah. And 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 I was in love with like this very like Martin Scorsese kind of narrative of like a hero. Like if you look at all of Martin Scorsese's work, it's all about like someone who's going to be successful in life, and then they completely plunge, like they completely take a dive and everything like completely fucks out. Like he did that in Raging Bull, he did that in Gangs of New York. He's done that in every single movie. You know, even in The Wolf of Wall Street, you see the
yes,
success of the character. So Martin Scorsese has always been very traumatized. Like he's always been engrossed in the fall and the plight of an individual, and basically the success of someone's life taking over them to a point where they can't control it. And growing up, like watching a lot of Scorsese work and a lot of like Quentin Tarantino's work as well, I had a very dark narrative in my life. Like
Yeah.
my short films were very deep. My short films were very complicated, complex. There was a lot of blood and people were dying. So when I got out of film school, I was like, yo, I'm gonna be this like Tarantino, Scorsese filmmaker.
Yeah.
So you can imagine with that thinking, suddenly the first movie that lands on my lap is like Happiness is a Four-Letter Word. And I'm like, no, man,
No,
where
that's
the
not my
guns,
stuff.
man? I'm like, yo, I want the guns, man. I'm like, okay, wait, can I give Kayimba a gun in the scene? You know? No. You know what I'm
It's not
saying?
that
Like,
movie.
you know what I'm saying? Like, they're like, no, it's not that movie. And what I realized in my life is that I don't want to get boxed in. Like, I really don't want to get boxed in. Like, for me, I realized that, we're in very early conversations and very early stages of development of a sequel to Happiness is a Four-Letter Word.
Okay.
And for me, I'm like, I wanna get that genre right. Like, I'm not ashamed of it. I embrace it. Like, I understand the market. I understand like the narrative. Like, I grew up surrounded by women. You know, I lost my dad at a
Yeah.
very young age, and I was raised by women. I was raised by my sisters, my aunts, my mothers, and I kind of like I know. I just understand that market. I know what they want to see, and I know how to write, and I know how to create for that market. So I'm not going to be afraid of that, you know. And if my next 2 or 3 movies are in that same genre, then that's okay. Like, I'm happy to like crack at it. And someone was teasing me saying that I'm the Tyler Perry of like this genre, and I'm like,
Yeah.
great, I'll embrace that. Like, I'll embrace
Yeah.
that, and I'll do 4 movies back to back of that genre. And then once I've done that, I'll be like, okay, cool. I'll look at something else.
Yeah.
I've had a
Yeah.
few like there's an offer on the table at the moment for like a vampire movie, like
Wow.
which I'm looking at as well. So I kind of like I don't want to like box myself into any kind of genre, but I also know that there's no shame in really cracking that genre and polishing your craft in understanding the audience, and just working at it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
something interesting that you said there, and something that I've heard Tyler Perry say,
Mm.
in terms of the genre, because he said, when his mom was getting abused, he's the one that was the entertainment to try and diffuse when there was women. So I think a lot of our creativity and a lot of our experiences as we grow up, a lot of our surroundings actually start inspiring the world that we translate into the storytelling. The guys that maybe were
Right.
around the Yizo Yizo insights, it was natural for them because it was
Right.
organic. They weren't telling a story about Miami or whatever. They were telling a real life story. And sometimes that's very hard to break out of. We
Mm.
grew up in Kasi, you grew up in Tembisa, and that's the world you understand. I remember when I was growing up, we admired criminals. So I always wanted to be
Mm.
like that guy, Patis Palm. It was always those legendary things. And I think we're shaped by that. How would you say, and maybe take us a bit of how you grew up and how
Mm.
that has shaped your craft? Because, the love for guns, I think, is like any Kasi kids. We had a
Right.
fantasy. I
Right.
remember I used to draw guns at school, and they called my mom and said, "Is this kid okay? Like, when other kids are drawing teddy bears, this guy draws guns."
Sure.
And it's because of the era we grew up in. How maybe tell us a bit about how you grew up. I know it's Tembisa, and how has that shaped your view to the world and your
Yeah.
storytelling?
On that on that same note, like, I think the thing about like the life of on the topic of gangster, like the first car that when I was able to buy a car, I had won 8,000 euros no, sorry, I had won 5,000 euros at Sitengi Film Festival,
Wow.
and that that film was called Portrait of a Dark Soul, and the main prize was 5,000
Jeez.
euros, blah blah blah. And what the irony was that I used all my savings to make that movie, and my mom had control over all my money. Like, when you're young, like mama has, you're like,
Yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah,
an
yeah,
account mama has, and my mom, and like my money is in that account. She never saw that
yeah.
account, but whatever money I was making growing up, like as a KTV presenter, like my mom would keep all that money. And I remember when I was getting into film school, I'd always hit my mom up and be like, Ma, I need 5,000, I need 3,000. And then they got to a point where I was making this film and I needed like 8,000, and that I'd never asked for that amount. And my mom was like,
Yeah,
okay, are you sure you want to spend that much on this movie? Because this is money you should be using to like invest in your first car. And I said, no, I got to make this movie. So
yeah,
I made the film, and as the reward, like, I got 5,000 euros. But the point of that is that I then bought my first car, and I bought a 325i white BMW two-door with the
yes,
sunroof.
yes, yes,
You know what I'm
Kushash.
saying? Because yeah, that was my first whip, because I was like, yo, I
Wow.
want this ride. And what was great about it was that, like, I think the thing about growing up and seeing these gangsters, or like seeing them in movies, right? Because we would see them in movies, and then you'd see them in
Yeah,
the townships. And I think growing up for us, it was very hard to find like a reference point of like an iconic kind of individual, a male figure that you wanted to be like.
yeah,
For us as young black guys, like, you couldn't say like, oh, I want to be like, like, at least the kids now can be like, yo, I want to be like Patrice, I want to be like
yes,
Obama,
yes.
for us, we didn't have those reference points. Like, for us, we
Mm,
had like the guy who rolled up in like the Alpina rims, and the Gusheshe 325IS,
yes,
and the attention that he got. So that was our aspiration. Anyway,
yes,
so for me, like, growing up in Tembisa, like, a lot of the movies that we watched were like, we had a VHS machine in Sidibeng. Like, we were one of the first houses in that street to have a VHS machine. And I had like Bruce Lee movies, Chuck Norris, and some like Jet Li, like some kung fu stuff. And I'd invite
yeah,
people over to my place, and like, kids would come around, we'd pack up the lounge, and we'd watch like countless movies over and over again. So I think for me, that was the birth of like enjoying content and enjoying, the escape. And, storytelling for us, like, we used to play with bricks, and those bricks were like
yes,
certain cars, and then the cops would come, and then you'd play, and then you grew up, and, so you were like creating stories with the little that you had, you know what I mean? And then
yes,
obviously you
yes,
start growing up, and you start noticing girls, and then you start playing house, and you're like, whoo,
yes,
whoo, you're like, whoo,
yes.
you're like, hey, it's bedtime now.
Yes, it's always gets to that point. And Lapo is like 12 o'clock at Emily.
It's like 12 o'clock midday, bro, and you got to crush on someone. And then
And
you're
you're like,
like, yo,
come through.
I'm going to play the dad. You're playing the mom, and it's bedtime now,
Yeah,
you know? So,
it's time.
so it's like, yeah, it was, and it was, so we're always kind of creating stories, growing up, and then like inevitably, like, it's part of my DNA and part of my understanding
Mm,
of like,
mm,
of how to communicate, or like, and then I got into art. I went to NSA. I did art. I
yeah,
majored in
yeah,
majored in photography, black and white photography, and I think then I kind of understood like the power of an image, and
yeah,
how an image could like portray so many like emotions and words. Um,
yeah,
I remember my first camera, proper like film camera, was a Pentax K1000, and used to put a film reel in, and used to wind it up, and then I put a timer on it, and like a
wow,
photo, you'd go like to take the photo, and then I realized that with the timer I can control when the snap comes back up. So I
yeah,
was
yeah,
experimenting. So I would like press click, and then I'd be in a completely dark room, And then I'd take a torch and then I'd run around the room with the torch and I'd put it on my face and I'd put it around my body, and then I'd go back to the camera, then I'd release it, and then the negative would come out and it had like 6 of my images, but like with the torch. And then I would take that negative and I would scratch it and I would damage it and then I'd print it out. So it was really like, I was always kind of just like experimenting, and I was playing with the medium of like of film, or like how to manipulate pictures without
just getting that craft right and everything. Now, I'm particularly interested about how we grew up, because I grew up in similar positions with few role models, as you said. And then we get into a very weird space where we are creatives and we are accepted differently by society. And I had to even leave law. Now, when you get to this industry and you start making it, the culture of the industry is also very toxic. The drinking culture, the partying culture, the substance abuse culture, and it's things that we don't talk about as Black creatives. People, talented creatives, are kind of falling off around us, and we never really say, we know that guy's got a drinking problem, we know that guy's got a drug problem, but just because he's a brilliant creative, we kind of turn the blind eye, and we losing a lot of people to that. And it's role modeling. I went through it. I thought advertising was about drinking after a big idea. So that whole environment culture. How has your experience been with that? How have you made it this far, avoiding that culture? Because there's a lot of young creatives that are in that. There's a lot of people that thinking, getting high in Brahm is part of the creative process. And we're losing a lot of talent. What is your journey there, and what would you advise young creators, because they kind of think it's part of creativity? I had a guy that says, if I don't smoke, I don't even get the juices going, and that has become almost like the virus that stops, especially Black creatives, from prospering.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll give you my introduction to the advertising world. After completing my high school at National School of the Arts, I worked full time as a KTV presenter to save up more money. After matriculating, I took like a gap year, but I was working in that year. And then at the end of the year, I said, cool, I'm relocating to Cape Town. And I relocated to Cape Town. And in my first year, my first year short film participated at the Durban International Film Festival. And the college had never had a short film participate at that festival. So I became like this kid who had done something for the school, blah, blah, blah. And then I went to the principal and I said, yo, can I have a meeting with you? Can you guys give me a scholarship for my second year? Because I knew that financially things weren't great at home, and I tried to ease the pressure from my mom. So I got a scholarship, and it was still the days in where you could still do public service announcements and PSAs and all of that. So I would do PSAs and I would submit them to the VUCA Awards, and I would submit them to the Dubai Film Festival, and I got shortlisted and I flew to Dubai, and my short films were doing well, my public service announcements were doing well. So by the time I was in the middle of my second year, I got headhunted to join an advertising, to join a production house that was doing commercials. And I'm probably 20, and I have a meeting with the producer, and they're like, hey, listen, we love your show reel and we want to represent you as a commercials director. And I'm like, okay, well, and then I give them the lowdown. I'm like, well, obviously, I'm still studying. They're like, cool, you'll study. And when you finish studying, you can come to work. So I would do college in the morning till about 2-3 o'clock. And then sometimes if I ended earlier or I only had one lesson,
You go
I'd
there.
finish college and then I'd go there, you know, and sorry, then I became quite good at like, you know, understanding the commercial space and how to put a treatment together and blah, blah, blah. But let me tell you, like the first time that I kind of went, what the fuck is going on, right? Like what they did at this production company was that they would invite agency creatives. So they would contact 6 different agencies, and that's Cape Town. So they'd contact like,
Yeah.
you know, the Ogilvy's, the, you know, all the top agencies, and they would say, yo, we throwing a party for agency creatives. And how they were very strategic about it is that they wouldn't invite any other competing production house. So
Okay.
so the production house represented 6 directors, and then they'd invite about 6 to like 8 different advertising agencies to this party so that we could mingle and get to, and obviously that
Know each
mingling
other.
is part of like, hey, do you have a brief with here's this young kid. But obviously because it's advertising, part of those parties are part of entertainment, you know. And
Yeah.
what the producer would then do is that that producer would contact 5 modeling agencies. So they'd contact like Boss Models, whatever other model agencies, and they'd say, "Yo, do you guys have any models on your books? Because we're throwing a party, and obviously, if your models interact with our directors, or if your
Wow.
models interact with the agency creatives, then it gives them a better chance at getting into a commercial, blah blah blah." So
Wow.
you need to understand. I'm a 20-year-old kid. I'm invited to this party. I've got a boy
Wow.
of mine from from Joburg who also moved to Cape Town. His name is Glenn, and I'm like, "Yo, Glenn, the company I'm working for is having a party on Friday." Glenn and I walk in. There's all these models, like there's models from
Wow.
fucking Brazil, Slovakia, there's Cape Townian
Jeez.
models, there's black, white, Chinese, like all of it, and then there's Coke,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
There's alcohol, and like there's people doing trips in and out the toilet, and I'm like, okay, cool.
What's
Like
happening?
I'm like, okay, this is it. This is like I'm 20 and like this is it. Like I'm 20, I'm getting represented. I'm not even finished with college yet. I'm a director, and like this is like Wolf of Wall Street. Like let's fuck it up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think like I didn't have like a very kind of, I didn't have that thing of like someone who'd be able to navigate it and go, no, listen, this is part of, like, don't get caught up in this. You know what I mean? I thought that this was part of the journey. This is part of like, and also, you know, you're growing up, you're reading up about these directors that are like rock and roll stars, and
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and obviously
Yeah.
like at that time, you know, directors that like, you know, that are amazing, like guys like Keith Rose, may he rest in peace. You know, you kind of start doing research and you're like, fuck, there's this guy called Keith Rose. He's also in Cape Town. And
Yeah.
you hear stories, you hear that Keith Rose shot an ad for 8 million. And then at the end of that ad, him and his producer walked into Porsche and they both drove out with Porsches. And you're like, yo,
Yeah.
fuck,
This
like
is it.
this is it.
This is the life. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So,
Mm,
so I think like, obviously in that like funness, like, I got caught up. I got caught up in like, okay, this is how like a director's meant to be rock and roll, like till they
yeah.
die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was a very hard thing to grapple with because it started off as fun. It started off as something that would happen once a month. And then you start realizing that shit, you know, you can't party without like someone saying, yo, let's get a bag. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then like before you know it, like, you know, the thing about these kind of behaviors is it starts off with something small, right? And then like
Yeah.
6 years down the line, you're like, well, where the fuck am I? Like,
What
you
happened?
can't even,
Yeah. Yeah.
what happened? You know what I mean? So for me, like, I know that when I used to write, like as a creative, like I used to kind of say that, like, yo, like I can't write if I don't have a blunt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I can't like. So I'd always kind of like I'd light my blunt, I'd light candles, I'd like, you know, and then the thing is when I had to stop everything and cut out substances and alcohol, the first time I had to put a treatment together and write, I was like, I got so anxious and nervous because I was like, fuck, I don't know how to do this sober. Like, I don't know how to write without a beer, like with like a beer chilling on the side, or like a glass of wine or a blunt. And then I had to like start getting into the habit of being a creative without any substances, whether it's a glass of wine, whether it's a blunt. And then ultimately, you know, those kind of journeys lead you into like understanding. For me, like now my journey is understanding that in order to be a creative, all I've ever needed was to be in sync with the creator himself.
Wow, wow,
You
that's
know,
powerful. That's powerful. And I
yeah,
mean, I'd repeat that again. And I think we share common experiences. I mean, I owned a nightclub at 21, you know, and you kind of think that that is the way you're supposed to live. And I think um, it's an important topic that we share with people, because there's a lot of people that are going through it in terms of, I can't be creative if I don't do this. And I think
right.
me, even as recent as 4 or 5 years ago, you know, it's almost that life, you don't know anything. And I see, by the way, your social media and just your demeanor when I meet you, there's a spirituality. Now, I usually say creativity is a very spiritual thing, where you need to have a clear mind, your body needs to be healthy, you need to meditate. How important is then spirituality in creativity? Do you believe in that, or is it just too poetic to say creativity is spiritual?
Well, I think, like, you know, the thing about this kind of topic is that people kind of don't want to talk about it, or they feel like maybe because they're not connected to God, like they distance themselves from it and go, like it's not for me. Like these guys are going to start preaching and all of that. But for me, it's like, you know, God can be in whatever form you want him to be in. He doesn't need to be a God that's in church, or a God that like is part of Christianity. Like for me, that's who he is, but he doesn't have to be that for everyone else. Like for me, I find like, rather like I experience godly moments, you know. So what that means for me is like when I'm with my family, when I'm chilling with my grandmother, when I'm chilling with my mom or my siblings or my nephews and nieces, like that for me is like a godly moment, because you know, I force myself to put my phone away, and I say, if I can be present and I can enjoy this moment, this is like a godly experience for me. And I think that's a spiritual connection with things that are tangible for us, you know. Whether it's like, you know, it's Sunday, I love trying to do my garden. I've got no idea, like my swimming pool is changing colors. I don't know how to do that pH system shit. I just pour
Just
like,
pour it in, Doc. Just
I
pour
just
it in.
pour like shock treatment, super shock treatment, shock. Like I swear, if I put my finger in there, it'll probably go tss, like, you know. But like for me, it's like, yo, like when I can take care of my garden and water it and like pick up my dog's shit, and like, you know, it's in little moments like that that are like, ultimately for me, those are godly moments, you know. When
Wow.
you're sitting with like a Word document and it's a blank page, and you're trying to put something to like together, you know, like that for me is like, those are godly moments, because like you are creating and you're looking after, like, so I've started rereading the Bible, because I've always said, I don't
Wow.
understand it. Like this thee, thou, thee, they, and then
What's
you're like,
happening?
well, you're like, fuck, how many disciples? Oh shit, and which one's the bad one? I'm like, yo, can someone do a book like with pictures and say good guy, bad guy,
This
good
is
guy,
it.
bad guy, you know? But it's so great, because it's like, it's the first time I'm actually being able, it's called the Life Application Study Bible, and it's the first time where I've kind of gone, oh, like this is what this verse means, and this is how I can interpret it into like daily life and daily kind
Yeah.
of, and you know, the first part is like I was reading about Adam and Eve, and that kind of like how God said, like, the first responsibility God gave Adam was to look after the garden and to look after all things in it, you know? And then I look at that and I'm like, wait, that doesn't necessarily mean like my garden in my
Got it. Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like God said, I'm giving you something. So I said, okay, metaphorically, what does that mean? Okay, God has given me my family. He's given me
Talent.
a company. He's given me talent. He's given me a car. He's given me a house over my head. He's given me food. He's given me friendships. He's given me,
Mm-hmm.
and then I kind of say, okay, metaphorically, that's my garden, right? Like
Jeez.
in the greater scheme of things, it's not literally the garden that's outside, but that's my
Wow.
garden. Like, and then I kind of say, God says, okay, I've given you this, look after it and take care of it, you know?
Wow.
So for me, it's kind of like, I'm taking my own time and understanding the word and understanding that connection. And it comes in different forms. Some people find it in yoga, some people find it in
Wow.
running, some people find it in exercising. And for me, it's like, I don't believe that there's any right or wrong.
Wow.
And I don't like the idea of like people. I think that's where we got it wrong, is kind of people saying, hey, you should pray this way, you should pray that way, or you shouldn't do
Yeah.
this. You know, I think people should just like interpret it for whatever it means for them, you know. And that's pretty
Wow.
much it, you know.
That's special, and it's something that I relate to quite strongly. Another thing that I relate to is your relationship with Kutlwano.
Right,
I remember you guys, I think you had Avatar.
right,
Z and I were sitting across you guys. And when you guys walked out, we were like, okay, that's a strong partnership. It's a bit like us, you know, very, very
right.
different, but somehow it connects. How is that relationship? And I mean, let's get into Seriti. Let's get into how
Mm.
you build Seriti. Let's get into this platform. You have to give away a secret. You can't just leave us without a secret. So for the people that are listening, what makes
Right.
Seriti tick? You know, and what is the secret ingredient? Share. Don't be shy.
So, you know, the thing about Kutlana and I's journey was that we both worked at BOM.
Yes, yes,
And you know, Bomb is where I had settled after I had done endless TV dramas. I had done Sukulu and Partners with Penguin
yeah,
Films. I had worked with Roberta on Montana. I had done the series called The Lab with Fanam Gwena with Curious Pictures. I
yeah.
had done like, so I had hopped around like 3 years of hopping around of directing like dramas, like back to back. And then I had a meeting with Desiree, and Desiree was like, listen, you can either be a gun for hire for the rest of your life, or you can build your show reel, and this is a good home and base for you. So then,
Mm,
you know, at the time we were working on Jacob's Cross, Kutlano was just kind of like in the building and hanging around, and he started helping with the casting process. And then me and him actually ended up moving in together, and we stayed together, and we watched shows like Entourage, and
yeah.
I think shows like that kind of started kind of making us believe that fuck, you can win as a team, you know. um
Mm,
and and I remember there was a time like Kat kept saying, yo, we should do our own thing, we should do our own thing, but it was just like one of those things where someone's just like saying stuff, but you kind of like, yeah, we'll do it. Then I left Bomb and I joined Velocity because I had felt that my show reel as a commercials director got to a really good place, and I wanted to be under the wing. Like I wanted to be in the same company that Keith Rose was in, and I wanted
yeah.
to be like around like Peter Carr, and I wanted to build further than what I believed Bomb could take me. And Kat and I still kept in touch. Um, and it was just one of those things where it was like, dude, like let's ride this out. Me, you, Debo Homalopo was meant to join us at the time, but obviously things
Yeah.
didn't work out. Um, and and Kat and I were like, cool, let's do this. And but Leanne and I had worked on many projects together, and you know, we kind of felt that between the two of us, we needed like the anchor who would control the vision and drive it, even though like you know, it feels like we are the kind of the ideas people, and Leanne kind of felt
Yeah.
like she can cost it, and she can know how to package it, and we can know where to shop it,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And Seriti was a very like, you know, we didn't have offices, so we rented out, because then Buffont closed. This was the company I was working for. We rented out like a small section at the Velocity offices. We ran from there, and we kind of felt like we were Seriti, but we were still in the same building that Velocity was in and Velocity was over. But the ads, like the briefs still kept coming in, and we were
Sure.
pitching to Mnet, and we were still pitching The Herd season 1. And, we're going back and forth, and Mnet was saying, no, like we had to rework it. Then we moved out of there. And when we moved out of there, we're like, okay, cool. We need to take salary cuts. Like, our other business partner, Kundai, who's in property, he put up some capital, but it was only going to really survive us for 3 months if we took salary cuts. So we took some salary cuts. But the way we worked it, we're like, okay, we looked at each other's debit orders and we said, okay, boy, when does your debit order go first? And then he's like, okay, mine goes off on the 25th. Okay, cool. You get your money first on the 25th. Mine luckily went off only at the end of the month. So my business partner will get paid first, and then I'll get lost, and then I can pay. You know what I mean? So we were able to, so we took and the thing that people kind of, I think once Mnet greenlit The Herd, it was like, cool, we finally have a show that can stabilize itself, and we bounced between and that's always been the vision of the company, was like, we wanted to create the same DNA that Bomb was. We wanted to have a very strong long form division for local content, and we still wanted to have a commercials wing for the advertising. And there's not many production companies that can offer that package, and that's what we wanted to offer, and I think just consistency, man. Like, we ended up taking up offices by Rosebank. There's like a really great office set up there with free Wi-Fi and internet, and you pay so we took up offices there, and it was like we were sharing, and it was just like, it was very small, it was very intimate, and there were only it was me, Kutlano, Leanne. Then Jody joined because I needed a strong producer to run while Leanne was on other projects, and it was just us. And then we started poaching directors, and we spoke to Paul, and then Paul joined us, and slowly the company started growing. We've done 3 seasons of 13 parts for Mnet. We're now doing Gomorrah.
And let's talk about that, because I'm a fan. Like now, and remember, again, you're in the company of friends, so you can tell us stuff.
Sure.
When are you coming back on? And how has that been? I mean, you guys are breaking records like crazy. The time that it plays is not enough. Like, I'm literally always wanting more. Like, it lives you on that cliffhanger. The acting is amazing. The story is beautiful. How did that come about? And what makes a good director? Because it's excellently directed. And what have you done there that is just it's I mean, the numbers show for themselves. I mean what that Gomorrah. Before you tell us what's going to happen next, let's start there.
You see, my sister just commented now. My sister commented and said that he doesn't even tell his own family what's going to happen in Gomorrah. Can I tell you, man? Can I tell you? My sister hits me up. My cousin hits me up. My gogo hits me up. My gogo's like,
you have to tell Gogo. Come on.
No, I can't. But the birth of Gomorrah is actually an idea that Kat had for a movie. And I think what inspired that project was the Times picture of the bridge between Santon and Alex,
Yeah.
And ultimately, a lot of it is also what talks to the kind of black middle class of South Africa, is that, we're one paycheck away from moving back to the other side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
Jeez, and that comes across strongly.
Yeah, it's like, all your life people work to aspire to get over the bridge. And then once you're over the bridge, it's like, fuck, if I don't get paid this month, I'm moving back to the bridge. Like, I'm moving back to where I come from, And we just wanted to speak to that kind of ideology and kind of say that, here's a bridge, and here's two kind of worlds that like rub up against each other every single day. Like, you know, you've got a car that pulls up and the guys that want to clean your windows are the guys from Alex, and it's just like
Okay.
there's that constant friction. And like what would it look like if one night completely altered the life of a woman who was from Alex and moved over the bridge, and one night in her life moves her back, you know? And
Yeah.
that was ultimately the birth of like the concept and the DNA of what Gomorrah stands for, you know. And ultimately, when you know, so what we do as a team is that once we've got our first kind of episodes, we did that with the herd, we did that with the imposter, is that I come on as like the not to say the lead director, but I kick off the first couple of episodes to set the tone
Yeah.
and to set like the look in terms of the pace and how we're going to shoot and the style of the show.
Yeah.
And what then happens is, because it's 260 episodes, I obviously can't direct all 260, and I actually don't want to direct all 260. You need a good team of 3 other directors who are going to take over once you've set up the look. So we started shooting. We started shooting 2 weeks ago. We're back in studio. Obviously, like all protocol in terms of health, like we've
Yeah.
got
Yeah. Yeah.
a health officer on set. The studio gets sanitized once a
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah. Yeah.
different time, man. Like face masks
Yeah.
and like, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But we were fortunate enough that we shot so much exterior of Alex. We shot so many establishing. We shot so many
Wow.
cutaways that when we come back, it's gonna feel like we're in Alex,
Uh,
which is great, you know. So all of the houses of the characters, all of those houses, the tavern. There's also another set. All of that is interior.
it's
Um,
brilliant.
s yeah,
Brilliant.
so
Brilliant.
we don't have to go back into Alex anytime soon again, because we really have like, you know, we've got our sets that are built in the studio.
Yeah. So you're an award-winning director. There's a lot of directors that want to get into the game. There's a lot of directors in the game. You know, an hour isn't even enough for this thing. How? What advice would you have for guys like on the come up, or guys in the industry right now that want to reach your level of success or even try to surpass it?
Can I tell you something? The thing about it is, people always say work hard, and I say, cool, work hard. Work hard is very important. But then I say, like, people say like, what's the thing that people don't always talk about is having the right attitude. Because you can be
Yeah,
a hard worker, but if your attitude stinks, I'm not gonna want to work with you,
that's
right?
it.
Like, you like, people are going to remember the experience of working with you. Like, I saw Ahmed Tilly's on our live now, and the thing
Yeah,
about someone like him is that you remember the experience of working with that person. So for
or
me, I
even
always
just
say
meeting
like,
him,
yeah, or even just meeting
or
him, you
even
know.
just
You
meeting
just,
Ahmed. You just 5 minutes with Ahmed just on a corridor. It's like
yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. You know, and the thing about that is that people need to understand that your attitude and how you treat people is actually the fiber of how people are going to remember you, you know, and
Mm,
treating every single person with respect, and
wow,
that respect filters to like arriving on time, you know, not looking down on the gaffers or the guys that are bringing you coffee. Like for me, like
wow,
my favorite person on set is the guy that brings me coffee. Like, cause the second I get
wow,
out of my car, he's out there, and like I shoot a
wow.
live with him, and I'm like, "Hey, yo, what's up? This is my homie," and you know, like people
Wow,
feel special, you know, and it's just like the so for me, it's like, you know, our consistency, discipline, and having the right attitude. You know, when I was shooting Gomorrah, I'd wake up at 4 o'clock. Between 4 and 4:30, I'd be on the skipping rope. I'd do some cardio exercises.
wow,
From 4:30 to 5, I'd read some morning like devotion, just like my message for the day. That's from 4:30 to
wow,
5, and I light a candle and I pray on that. From 5 to 5:30, I wash, I feed my dog. 5:45, I'm on the road. I'm at studio by 5:06. I'm the first one to pull in.
Wow.
And as I pull
Wow.
in, Zeno Peterson is right behind me. And then I shoot the day. And while I'm shooting the day, like I'm looking at the call sheet for tomorrow and I'm working out what's going to be shot tomorrow. And I'm working out what's going to be shot the next day. And like, if anyone on my team needs to know if I need something for this particular scene, they have that time to make sure
Wow.
that we get that thing, you know? And then I come home and
Wow.
then I get home and then I shower, I rest, I prep, I look at the day, and then I do it again. And I wake up at
Wow.
4 and I get to the shoot.
I see my Unilever client is here, Miss Nkoli, saying it's like the 5 FM club, you know, and really
Yes.
waking up and your
Yeah.
mornings. And I subscribe to that. Your mornings are the most important. I mean, my wife reminds me the other day, I woke up and I watched the news. And I was
Right.
an awful person the whole day. Like I was, like my wife kept on saying, but what's wrong?
Yeah,
You know,
sure.
and it's because I had started the day with like, oh, now there's 11,000 people with corona. Oh my goodness,
Yes.
everything is,
Yes.
you know, and how you start your day
Yeah.
is literally, and that's what Ms. Nkoli is saying, the preparation, discipline, and how you start your day. You know,
Right.
an hour is never enough for this. Now, tell me, what do you want your legacy to be? You know, and look, you're young, but I think we're at an age now when we've been in the industry where we are thinking legacy. We are thinking what's next for the next generation. What do you want your legacy to be in this industry?
You know, the thing about it is like, you know, I was speaking to someone earlier today and I was talking about how before lockdown, like I can't even, it's so weird. Like I can't walk through Sandton Mall without having like two young people in the industry that go, "Hey, yo, teabag, hey, yo, sorry, man." And then they come up and they're like, "Yo, listen, I've been following." For me, like, ah, man, that's better than any box office numbers that happiness could do, you know?
Mm,
Like for me, it's like when I'm able to like live my life and do the best that I can with my work with integrity, and it has a ripple effect in other people's lives without knowing it, like that for me is legacy, you know?
yeah,
So ultimately, it's really about making a difference in people's lives through the work that we're doing, you know? So yeah,
yeah.
I think like, yeah, for me, that for me is like inspiring the
And
youth,
and and,
man.
and Thabang, your ambitions, you know, where do you want to take this thing? Where are you taking Seriti? Where are you taking yourself? Like
Right.
what is in your head, you know, because we see up to Kimura, but I'll be
Yeah.
interested to say, where are we going with you?
Yeah. Well, hey, there's a lot of projects like, you know, there's obviously Gomorrah, there's an international series that we're pitching, there's some movies that we're pitching, but
Ahmed says
ultimately like
Hollywood. Thabang,
you
Ahmed
know
is
what?
saying
I want
Hollywood.
You know what? For a long time, in the same way that I thought I was a gangster director, I was always like, I'm gonna live in Hollywood, and I don't like. I know I'll definitely have a house in Silicon Valley. I'll definitely have that, but I don't. I'm not gonna live there, man. Like, I'm gonna use that money, and I'm gonna make international shows back home. You know, and
Mm,
if I go out for 5 months and shoot a project, I'll always come back home. But for me, like, I love and respect Gavin Hood. After Tsotsi, like he went and relocated to LA. I would not be okay with like just relocating and not knowing that I can make a difference like back home, you know?
yeah,
For me,
yeah,
it's about training. It's about opening up studios. It's about like what Tyler Perry has done in Atlanta. I want to do that here for the South African youth. And I think
yeah,
that for me is the legacy project that's like, I'm not going to be happy in Silicon Valley in California, like shooting back to
yeah,
back, like Bad Boys 5,
yeah,
6, and not make an
yeah.
impact back home, you know?
Yeah. Now I know like with my work, it's like your children, and this is an unfair question. But
Right.
when you look back at your career, which is that one project or work or advert or show that you would say, you know, this is close, this is like my favorite. This is close to my heart. This is what this is when I was, you know, on fire.
I would definitely say Sukula and Partners, the law drama that I did that was written by Portia Gumete. Yeah, that was amazing because
Mm,
the experience of that show is amazing, but that's also the drama that got us to the Emmys. And I remember like it was yesterday, like they call out, they say, and from South Africa, Thabang Moleya, Portia Kumeta, for Sukula and Partners. And we walked down this carpet, man, and it was like slow motion, man.
Wow.
And these cameras are just like,
Wow.
and you're just like, what is going
Wow.
on?
What's happening? Wow.
So for me
Wow.
it's like, I think life will always do that. Like God will always give you kind of nudges. It's like when you're playing, like, when you've got the Uber, the Waze on, and then there's like you're traveling and you're gonna pick up a little thingy on the way, and then it
Yeah.
flies you.
Yeah.
I think God
Yeah.
gives you those little nuggets of like, yo, keep going, keep going.
My goodness.
You're in the right direction. So I think for me, like, I've always kind of had like little moments and pockets where God and I felt validated that I'm on the right path.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, last question, as we make it and we struggle, I come from a very different background. How is that part of your money management? What advice would you have people? Because the success comes with money. And I mean, how do you handle that? What is just quick advice, because there's people here that are going to go through the journey, become more successful. You
Yeah.
get your first dividend. What do you do? Do you buy a property? What is your financial advice just in the departure, as we've got 2 minutes left? So this is your goodbye quote.
So for me, I've got a broker. There's money that once I get paid, I don't even see it. I've got like an account that if anything happened to me physically, I would still get the salary that I get today. So there's an investment account on that.
Yeah.
There's a retirement fund, and also, can I tell you, for a long time I didn't have medical aid. When I was at Rockstar, and I was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
getting like high and being careless with my life. I was like, medical aid? Who needs that shit?
Never. Bring the
So
money
it's
here.
like it's like medical aid, like it is what it is.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
think for
yeah.
us, like, hey man, the small things like just medical aid, man, just insurance on yourself and insurance on making sure like don't die and let your parents or your family have to bury you and deal with like your debt.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Thabang, an hour is not enough. Congratulations, my brother. To me, it just feels like it's still the beginning. There's so much success. Big up for your
Thank you.
humility. Big up for who you are. And you are making each and everyone proud. And thank you, my brother. Any parting words? We've got like 30 seconds left.
Yeah, I think we have to just stay consistent, discipline. If you look at everyone, Muhammad Ali, Tyson, everything, the common thread with everyone great is consistency. And I think you'll save the live so that people can watch it. Thanks for having
Yeah.
me. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah. No, salute, man. I'm looking forward. So when is it back on? Komora, give
Soon.
me a date. Monday. Is it Monday?
No, not this Monday, next Monday.
Ah! Thank you so
Yeah.
much, T-Bag, man. Keep
All right,
on
thanks, my
rocking.
brother.
Say,
All right,
say, say
cool.
hi to Kutlana and everyone, and we are truly proud of you. Thank you to everyone that is listening. We're having another one at 6 o'clock. I want to make these Sunday sessions where it's just about creatives, talking about creativity. There's so
Sure.
many guys coming, and they look up to you. They look up to us, and it's just to let them into the world so that these things are public. The chats that we have are public,
Yeah.
and so next week, 6 o'clock, we've got Sibu that is going to be joining us. So
That's
thank
great.
you very much, and
Thanks, my
have a
brother.
good evening. And this has been powerful. I'm going to save it. Thank you,
Okay.
Ahmed. Thank you
Thank you,
to
Ahmed.
my Unilever client, Miss Toli. Thank you so much. All the best, and have a good evening. Peace.
Peace.